My first sermon here was, I think, 2-3 years ago, I'm not really sure, and I titled it, God in the Hands of Angry Sinners. It's a play on Jonathan Edwards' essay sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, right? And so I've just been labeling them part 1, part 2, part 3, and just for the rest of my life. So I thought I'd better explain it. At any rate, we're on part 7. So today's teaching will be significantly different and will involve hands-on practice, so buckle up, right? You noticed you don't have any notes today. I have the notes. Here they are, yes. There will be a handout, and it comes a little later, so it'll be at the halfway. No, it'll be toward the end. All right, so I'm so broke, I can't even pay attention. We're talking about the rhythms of attention today. Joking aside, our culture really is impoverished when it comes to paying attention. Our attention may be the most valuable thing we can possess or give to someone or to something. One of the things we notoriously fail to pay attention to is our emotions, and that is the lion's share of what we'll be doing today. We're also addicted to figuring it out, whatever it happens to be. I'm certainly addicted to figuring it out, and I come by it honestly. I was taught by my culture. There are a lot of us addicts right here in the church today. How in blazes did that happen? A likely culprit, anybody here know what I teach, by the way? History. Been doing that for 26 years, right? So a likely culprit to this addiction is the scientific revolution, which began in the 1500s and continues today. This revolution has culturally positioned rationality and matter, especially rationality as applied to matter, as the ultimate arbiter of reality. You guys with me? Right? Most everything else has been relegated to the dust heap of superstition, delusion, and fantasy. When was the last time you said or heard, "It doesn't matter"? Right? This language comes from the scientific revolution. If it couldn't be picked up, handled, put into a beaker, or viewed under a microscope, it was said to be immaterial. In other words, it didn't matter. It was nonsensible or nonsense. These are terms we get from the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution. Now, don't hear Tom saying that science is the enemy, right? Or some other such craziness. Science is a powerful tool, one of several for getting at ultimate reality. Unfortunately, it has come to be viewed in the West and beyond as the only tool, and that's where problems set in. Of course, we know what the trajectory of faith has been as a result of all this. What we don't often pay attention to is the resulting impact on our attitudes and emotions. Emotions, which, by the way, cannot be put in a test tube, have also been tossed on the dust heap as unreliable, suspicious, and dangerous, inside and outside the church. Emotions occupy a special place in this equation because they can be unreliable, suspicious, and dangerous. Right? There is a reason for this. They can feel hard to figure out and control because they are hard to figure out and control. Right? Control, after all, is the entire point of the scientific endeavor. We want our cars and our stoves and our spacecraft to be under control, and they should be. Throw enough money at the science behind them, and we can largely achieve this. But how do we get our emotions under control? Are they even supposed to be under control? You ever thought about that? Perhaps we need to reach back into the tool bag for some of the important things of life that science can't seem to get at very neatly. Now notice, even this metaphor of the tool bag implies that we're working on a machine, which is a child of science. Our thinking about reality has been thoroughly steeped in the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, and the Industrial Revolution. Thoroughly steeped. How do we sort out any of this if we fear our emotions, suppress them, and misuse them? The Western church is in crisis today, and it is largely an emotional crisis. Just ask the many clergy and lay people who have left the faith. In every case that I'm aware of personally, they were not reasoned out of the faith. They were emoted out of the faith. According to research by Packard and Hope, 65 million adult Americans have left the church, but not their faith. That's interesting. In fact, many left the church to save their faith. Many of these people are simply done with what they see as joyless, mean-spirited, judgmentally, emotionally immature Christianity. This is more than 1/3 of all American adults, not just believers, 1/3 of all American adults. If God is the source of our emotions, and I submit that he is, right, suffice it to say that emotions need to reclaim their place at the table along with faith, reason, and other parts of the self that God has sourced into us. The best part is we don't have to feed our addiction to figuring it out. Jesus has already figured it out. We need to listen, and emotions are a big part of listening. Big part. So, Pat and Emily Hill and Amy and Tom Gordon, in their ongoing longing for authentic Christian community, all stumbled, unbeknownst to each other, onto the Luke 10 community. In this community, we all discovered something that has since impacted us at CLG, the local college campus ministry as well, and even the Student Statesmanship Institute that Anthony teaches at. It wasn't even something any of the four of us did. Rather, this discovery had a kind of built-in locomotion of its own. When we ended up in a CLG small group practicing this new discovery, Emily and Pat revealed that they had taken this to the campus ministry with very great effect. After a few weeks practicing in our small group, Anthony took it to an alumni meeting of SSI and found great enthusiasm there, with several asking how to take this back to their home churches. Your CLG elders have also practiced some of what we call the rhythms of attention. Now we're going to share this with you. An important note here. This is a way of being together as the church. It is not the way of being together as the church. You guys hearing me on that? Okay. Let's work our way into this. Note the emotions wheel on the screen. This is one of several wheels we use in our small group. Anthony dug into the Psalms and made note of particular Psalms which address the overarching emotions that you see near the center of the circle. So, for example, bad, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, happy, surprised. So he went and looked at some Psalms that deal with those larger categories, okay? And so we're going to make that available to you. Let's see here. It's important to note here that the Bible is deeply emotional. And you can see just a part of that up there. Any doubt about that should be abolished by looking into some of these Psalms, along with other biblical texts. David, Job, and the prophets in particular regularly called God out, right? Hey, God, you promised this, but I'm experiencing that. What gives here? You've been there. So the rhythms of attention as described by Luke 10 follow this basic format. And Luke 10, by the way, when I say that, I'm not talking necessarily about the biblical chapter. I'm talking about an online community that calls themselves Luke 10. We can discuss that another time. So check in. This is the first rhythm of attention. This is where we share our current emotional state. This is way harder for Amy and I than we expected. Some of us are deeply in touch with our emotions and can name them. Others, like Amy and I suspect maybe most, really struggle with this. The emotions wheel has been very helpful in this regard. I've actually had profound moments of relief when I've been able to name what it is that I'm feeling. Oh, I'm not merely happy, I'm playful, I'm trusting, and I'm content. During check-in, advice or help of any sort is never offered unless it is specifically asked for. Trying to fix each other is off the table. The question, how can we best be here for you in this, is where someone might ask for advice or prayer or perhaps indicate that it's enough to simply be heard. Perhaps they wish to listen to Jesus as a group. Perhaps there is some other way of being together around a particular concern. Right? All right, second rhythm, listening. Compare and contrast these two questions. Ready? What would Jesus do? That's the first question. What is Jesus doing? That's the second question. Both are good questions. But I submit that the second is demonstratively better. When I ask, what would Jesus do? I'm putting myself in the analyst chair. In fact, I may very well be feeding my addiction to figuring it out. I got to figure out, what would Jesus do? When I ask, what is Jesus doing? I put myself in a listening posture. When we listen to Jesus together as a group, we take a few moments to listen quietly around a particular question. Jesus, is there something you would want us to know about whatever the thing is? Now think about it. Who is the leader in this group? Is it you? Is it me? Oh, maybe it's Jesus. Letting him set the agenda has, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but also relieved to say, been revolutionary for me. Okay? So at this point, we quiet ourselves and pay attention to any images or impressions that may come to mind, maybe words. They just might be from the Lord. We then share our impressions in community, the group, and note whether our impressions, etc., are in agreement with Scripture and whether they speak peace into our souls. It's important to note here that we don't pull the "God told me this" card and you need to obey, right? We don't pull that. The last rhythm is appreciation, and it might actually be the most important rhythm, but we're not covering it today because of reasons. We'll add this in another time. It's my way of trying to get back in front of you, actually. So Emily, Pat, and Harrison are going to come up now, and please come on up if you would. And we're going to show what this looks like in an unstaged, unscripted check-in. Okay? All three are newish to CLG, and I hope you've had a chance to meet them, and if not, here they are. Pat is the campus minister at NMC for his house. Emily is married to Pat and plays a vital role in that ministry. There's very little happening there that doesn't affect and involve her input and support. More on that in a little bit. Harrison also plays a vital role in the ministry as the associate campus minister and lives with Amy and I. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the live feed for the following reason. We're about to go into territory that none of us know exactly what's going to happen, and we don't want to immortalize that on the internet. Okay? So we're going to cut that now, and we're going to actually move the chairs a little closer and pull this thing back. So here we go.